What is up, and welcome to Three and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. BJ Bennett, glad to be here with you alongside Christian Gokel on a Friday afternoon. Hope you're doing well. We have a lot to get to on the program this afternoon. Obviously, the Final Fours on the women's side tonight, the men's side tomorrow. Those starting. We'll have a national champion, a couple of national champions in college basketball moving forward. We're going to continue to talk a lot of NFL draft, needless to say, specifically with the Atlanta Falcons, as they are in such a unique spot at number 4 overall. Do they take best player available? Could that be a quarterback? What are our philosophies there? Could they trade down? Some information from D. Orlando Ledbetter. We'll share with you. Dave Schote, the Falcoholic, will join us as well. So a lot to get to here on the program. But we were not with you yesterday because it was opening day. And if Kevin was here, he could calm me down. Listen, the Braves are 0-1. Couple of things we got to get to here right off the bat, Christian. Braves fall to the Phillies 3-2-10. Not an epic performance from Max Fried. He was good, not great. Offensively, you saw Ronald Acuna do some nice things. You got the pinch hit home run from Pablo Sandoval, which was great to see. You had some missed opportunities late where you had bases loaded with Christian Pache late in the game, unable to get it done. Obviously, in extra innings now, and I am not a fan of this, Christian, but you start with a runner on second base every half inning. The Braves not able to get a runner home from third with one out. Ozzie Albies was thrown out in the top of the 10th, and then you had the Phillies advance their runner from second. Basically, a bouncer gets by Austin Riley. The Braves lose. So we're still calm. We're 0-1. We lost, but Braves, I say we, the Atlanta Braves, 0-1. It was good to have baseball back, but kind of what stood out to you yesterday with the Braves and Phillies?
I just had the sinking feeling around the Braves. And again, it's one game out of 162, but I had the sinking feeling that they were doing the things wrong that they did last year, right? Like when it was Bobby Cox Braves era teams, it was small ball. Like you knew the Braves were going to bunt, get a guy over. If you got him on first, you're going to sacrifice the out, get him to second, and then get 2 shots at driving a guy in. That was just small ball baseball. The Braves did it better than anybody else. I don't think we saw an attempt at a steal yesterday. And you saw 2 of your big guys go hitless in terms of Freddie Freeman and Ozzie Albies at 2 and 3 in the order. So it was just Ozzie Albies struggling at the plate, being bad at small ball, and then Max Fried every 3 to 4 starts is going to hit you with a clunker where it's kind of rough for him. He can't locate the curveball, and once that happens, it's going to be a rough outing for him. And I say rough relatively, right? He threw 5 innings and gave up 2 runs, but he threw 94 pitches to get through 5 innings. So it was just all the stuff that you got frustrated with them last year was what you saw happen to them in game 1. And I think that's why you felt the frustration with them. It would have been so much better if it was just like 7-4 or something like that and they lose that way. But just the tooth pulling that was yesterday was real tough to watch.
It's tough to lose in dramatic fashion. It's tough to lose in extra innings. It's tough to lose on opening day. And this is cathartic. I'm talking to the listeners. I'm talking to myself. It was one game. The Atlanta Braves are going to be very, very good. They are not, the whole dynamic hasn't changed after one game. They are still the favorite in the division. But yeah, extra innings was weird to me. And maybe I'm a little bit jaded because you had, as you referenced, Ozzie Albies getting thrown out at home plate on a shallow pop from Marcell Ozuna, and then the Phillies were able to advance their runner to basically have a walk-off, which to me is kind of a walk-off that's non-traditional because of the way the extra innings setup is. And Christian, I don't like it. I get that you're trying to speed up or shorten the game, but for folks who maybe forgot about this and didn't see it or hear it yesterday, you start out every half inning in extra innings with a runner on second. So the person who was the last out the previous half inning is now on second base. So, top of the 10th or whatever, the Braves have Ozzie Albies on second base as soon as the inning starts. And bullpens have always been such a kind of determinative X factor, right? Determining X factor for baseball, because there's a big difference in having a really good bullpen and having a struggling bullpen. And to me, you kind of mitigate those advantages. You kind of limit those advantages where, teams will go out and spend a lot of money like the Atlanta Braves have on a guy like Will Smith. And he did a nice job yesterday, but I just think you're kind of cheating the game, if that's fair to say, by just putting a runner on second base. I don't like it, Christian.
I think a lot of people compare it to college football's overtime where you're just giving somebody a scoring opportunity, right? I know a lot of people don't like college footballs because you're pretty much guaranteed a field goal right there. Maybe back it up to the 50 if you want to increase the scoring and shorten the game, because that's all it is you're trying not to let this one go to 18 innings, especially in the NL where you don't have the DH and you're all of a sudden you're in the 18th inning and you have position players pitching or pitchers having to come up and pinch hit. But I got to break in with some breaking news. This is from Robert Flores on Twitter. Major League Baseball has announced that they are moving the All-Star game out of Georgia following the controversial voting laws that have been put out from the state legislator in Georgia. This is directly from Rob Manfred. He says, over the last week, we've engaged in thoughtful conversations with clubs, former and current players, the Player Association, and the Players Alliance, among others, to listen to their views. I have decided that the best way to demonstrate our values as a sport is by relocating this year's All-Star game and MLB draft. Major League Baseball fundamentally supports rights for all Americans and opposes restrictions to the ballot box. In 2020, Major League Baseball became the first professional sports league to join the nonpartisan Civic Alliance to help build a future in which everyone participates in shaping the United States. We proudly used our platform to encourage baseball fans and communities throughout our country to perform their civic duties and actively participate in the voting process. Fair access to voting continues to have our game's unwavering support. We will continue with our plan to celebrate the memory of Hank Aaron during the season's All-Star festivities. In addition, Major League Baseball's planned investments to support local communities in Atlanta as part of our All-Star Legacy Project will move forward. We are finalizing a new host city, and details about these events will be announced shortly. That, again, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred, announcing that the All-Star game is being moved out of Atlanta and out of the state of Georgia following the controversial voting laws passed by our state's legislature.
Wow, so some breaking news there right there at the start of the show, and you certainly understand the decision. You certainly understand the frustration from the standpoint of voter suppression, and you've seen a number of different entities take a stand, say this is not okay, say this is not what we want to be a part of, and that's a move from Major League Baseball that I think a lot of people will applaud. As difficult as it may be for the Atlanta Braves to take a stand against voter suppression, take a stand against, potentially things that limit access to the ballot box. So breaking news there. And I think that's a powerful statement from Major League Baseball.
I get the thought behind it, but I think you're punishing the people that the law is punishing by doing it. That's my first thought. Is it's not just the fact that the eyes are going to be on the city of Atlanta. It's the economic stimulus that comes with the All-Star game, is hotels. And just being frank, I mean, what it is we're talking about minority voters here, right? Is who is being punished by these new laws. And you're going to punish a lot of minority owned businesses in the city of Atlanta and the surrounding areas by moving this game out. And look, it's not the first time we've seen a major sports league move stuff. I mean, Charlotte has lost the NBA All-Star game in the past because of some controversial laws that they have passed. But I understand the statement that it's making, but why not use the platform of the city where those laws were passed if you want to make a statement versus moving it out and punishing the people who are inside the city actively fighting it every day? I get it, but at the same time, it's not the decision I would have made.
And correct me if I'm wrong, was it Freddie Freeman who maybe said something along those lines either yesterday or the day before, saying, hey, maybe we can use this as an opportunity to make a statement against things we don't agree with and to stand up, from the standpoint against voter suppression, especially towards minorities, to kind of stand up in unity as a team, as a sport. Did he say something along those lines?
Something similar, yes.
Yeah, so interesting news, breaking news. I certainly understand the frustration and the disappointment and the anger, surrounding the laws and surrounding the suppression, which is flat out, unacceptable towards, as you said, minority voters. And Major League Baseball coming out today saying they are moving so no details yet in terms of where they're moving it to. This is just breaking as we speak.
That is correct. It just came out coming across the old Twitter wires here as we started the show. But yeah, it's gone. It's not going to be in Georgia. They're going to find another host city. They said they're leaving some of their donations intact with some of the local Atlanta charities, but that's fine. But just you have to think by July, we were pushing for a full reopening, if not a full reopening the Braves have already announced that they're pushing towards a 50% capacity at Truist and getting prepared for the All-Star game. So you would have been looking at least 50% capacity for the All-Star game, the home run derby, all those festivities, showing off the new ballpark at Truist. And now that's off the table completely. And you don't know when the next time that will come back around is.
And I guess in terms of a response from the Braves, we'll have to kind of wait and see on that, potentially over the next couple of hours or maybe the next day or two.
Yes, well, I've been updating their pages. I have not seen the Braves tweet anything out.
So breaking news there here as we open 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. BJ Bennett alongside Christian Gokel. Certainly we'll keep you updated there. But in response to the state of Georgia's voter suppression laws, you will now have or laws that many people, of course, view as voter suppression, especially towards minorities. You will now have the Major League Baseball All-Star Game removed from the city of Atlanta, and that was set for this summer. I believe the Braves yesterday had the All-Star Game patch on their uniform. So details coming out now that will be changed, a new location. And again, we will wait and see what the response is from the Atlanta Braves. But breaking news early in the show, All-Star Game for 2021 this summer, no longer going to be in Atlanta.
MLB draft there, BJ.
Also the Major League Baseball draft.
Yep. So All-Star Game and draft both being pulled out of the state of Georgia.
So Major League Baseball making a statement clearly today about their response to the laws regarding voter suppression in the state of Georgia. BJ Bennett, Christian Gokel here with you, 3 and Out on a Friday afternoon. We are glad to be with you. A lot to get to. We'll come back with more all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. BJ Bennett, Christian Gokel back here with you, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network on a Friday afternoon. A lot to get to on the program as we'll talk NFL draft with the Atlanta Falcons in the 4 spot coming up. You've had some movement in front of them. Obviously, a lot of options there for the Falcons. We'll also talk NCAA tournament, but the news of the day breaking right at the start of the show, Major League Baseball moving the All-Star game for 2021 and the Major League Baseball draft out of the city of Atlanta in response to Georgia's voter laws, obviously, which many people deem as voter suppression towards minorities in particular, and Major League Baseball taking a strong stance. Again, you saw the Braves yesterday with the All-Star patch, I believe, on their uniform, and the Atlanta Braves will no longer host the All-Star game or the Major League Baseball draft in the city of Atlanta, Christian, coming up this summer.
Yeah, not just the All-Star game. I mean, the All-Star game is just the cap really to the end of a week of festivities. You have the future game, the home run derby. They had added the MLB draft as well in the host city. That was going to be July 11th through the 15th. So you would have 4 days of having a ton of the top executives in the sport around the MLB draft in the city of Atlanta. But now all of that is gone. And a lot of that following our president's speech on ESPN, where he was interviewed and encouraged Major League Baseball and others to move events out of the state of Georgia, and specifically the All-Star game out of the state of Georgia, encouraged them to do it. And now Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, has done it. And just going back to the laws that have been passed, I mean, just to clarify, not taking one side or the other, just putting out the facts, the new law imposes voter identification requirements for absentee ballots, empowers state officials to take over local election boards, limits the use of ballot drop boxes, and makes it a crime to approach voters in line to give them food or water. And BJ, that last line right there, you can't give somebody food or water who's standing in line to do our most basic right as American citizens. And the restriction of the ballot boxes, the drop boxes, are what people are truly upset about, because they say it disproportionately affects minorities, specifically African Americans inside the state of Georgia. So those lines in there are really where the pushback have come from.
And absolutely and understandably. I mean, it's extremely disappointing. It's not okay. And I think you've seen baseball come out and say, hey, we're not going to stand for this. We're going to do what we can in whatever form or fashion that is to, stand up for as much access and as much equitability in access as possible. Again, we are kind of awaiting, I guess, a response from the Atlanta Braves on this, and we'll see what city potentially the All-Star game is moved to moving forward. But I mean, this is obviously quite the statement, Christian, for the Braves, the organization, the city, to lose something like this. I mean, is this something that could prompt some reconsideration or kind of a counter response in your mind, or is this kind of is what it is?
I doubt it, because Governor Kemp has already come out and said that he expects just the full weight of the opposition. I'll say opposition for him, the Democratic side, to come down on him. He said he expected to be called every name in the book. He expected sanctions and boycotts. And I mean, this is about the biggest boycott you can get in terms of professional sports, unless like one of the teams was to announce they're moving out of the state, which that would be one of the nails in the coffin, I'd have to imagine, for someone in political office. But this is a massive statement from Major League Baseball. I know, and good luck with this. Some people are pushing for the Masters to be moved out of the state of Georgia. I don't know how that would work, but if you really want, I mean, All-Star game is an All-Star game. It's the state of Georgia. We care about the Braves. I don't know how much people necessarily care about an All-Star game, but you start pushing for some of the stuff that is truly Georgia-centric, I think that's when all of a sudden a reaction will be had that will be felt in our city's capital.
And I guess, obviously, obviously you think about, All-Star weekend and kind of the spotlight and the stage, but I think you mentioned it last segment, at least the potential, maybe if it's safe, to have a significant number of fans there, the kind of the spotlight of the sports media and the spotlight of the baseball world. So not only is this a statement from baseball saying, hey, we don't agree with this, we're not going to, allow it, stand up for it, or be a part of it, but you're also talking about a kind of an economic statement as well.
Correct. And a massive one, I had to imagine, because again, it's when you think about things like this being put out and something that's going to be a week long, right? It's not just the fans that are coming in, right? Because if I had to imagine for something and during a pandemic and when we're getting back and reopening, you're probably seeing less than 500,000 people influx into the city in terms of fans, right? Because there are a good amount of fans that will come to the city for this, but also ESPN puts on the All-Star game. And so you have the entire support system, ESPN buying out hotels for their producers, for their camera people, for their talent, right? That's a huge economic boon for whatever hotels they use, the restaurants all these people will be going to and eating at is just a huge, I mean, something that can make your quarter if you're a restaurant, right? Just all that money coming in, just the different facilities that would be used during it is just all gone now. And if I had to imagine, BJ, there's probably already a lot of money that's been spent on this, been spent on getting prepared for the All-Star game. This isn't something you throw together in a couple of weeks, right? People plan for these months, years out. So there's definitely an economic impact that's going to be felt already. I wouldn't be surprised if lawsuits are filed against Major League Baseball to recuperate losses from investments people have already put into Atlanta hosting, or not. I guess it wouldn't be the city of Atlanta. What, just Cobb? It would have been Cobb. It's not even Fulton County where it is anymore, but it's still, it's Metro Atlanta where this would be felt. And if I had to imagine, like I said, there's going to be some lawsuits headed Major League Baseball's way, but it's Major League Baseball, man. They're going to be fine, and they're the ones coming out on the side of this, of being on the side of progression, not regression.
Yeah, and again, if you're just now joining us, the Major League Baseball All-Star Game this summer for 2021, along with the Major League Baseball Draft, so you're talking about a couple of multiple-day kind of events, will not be held in Atlanta in response to Georgia's voter law, which many deem is direct voter suppression, especially towards minorities. And Christian, you're talking about not just one event with the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, but the Major League Baseball Draft as well. So again, a bold statement of response from Major League Baseball. And you think about Major League Baseball and the varying perspectives, right? The Players Association, Rob Manfred, everybody basically saying, no, we're not going to be a part of this, and moving it out.
Yeah. And Travis Jadon, a good friend of the show, just texted in saying, can we think of the voter suppression laws as being bad for Georgia and the All-Star game being moved out of Georgia is bad for Georgia? That's what we said at the top of the show. Is when this first came out, Freddie Freeman said something very similar to this, which is you're kind of punishing the same people that are being punished by the law. Sure. Are you getting back at the people, quote unquote, that have pushed this law through? Sure. This is going to be a big knock for Brian Kemp and especially the people around the city where Truist Park is. But this is also a huge economic impact on the everyday people that go to work that were expecting this money to come in, that's now all of a sudden just evaporated. So I say this all the time on the show. Two things can be true at the same time, and this is negative for everyone in the state of Georgia. And that's why I'm not the person retweeting this saying, great job, Major League Baseball, this is what we were looking for. I'm the person saying this seems rushed, and this seems like we're looking for pats on the back from all other 29 teams to go after the city and the state in which this one team's in, versus actually looking at this and saying, how can we really make a difference in this? Because Major League Baseball moving the All-Star game out isn't going to change the laws. It's not going to get elected officials. You're not changing your vote for the person you voted for because Major League Baseball moved the All-Star game out, if I had to imagine. And the reality people are coming to is, based off of our last presidential election, Georgia was a blue state, just based off of the last presidential election. But in terms of our state legislator, it is still very much a red state. So we are a state divided right now, but baseball moving the All-Star game out doesn't help either side. It just hurts the state of Georgia.
Well, and it's a very fair observation and point about the economic impact and potentially who it could hurt, and worrying for those folks and sort of their economic bottom line. But Major League Baseball today, again, making a statement saying no All-Star game, no Major League Baseball draft. Both of those things were set to come up this summer in the city of Atlanta, and again in response to the state of Georgia's voter laws, which many have deemed is being suppressive, especially towards minorities. So that breaking news today, right as we start the shows, and it's something that I think started to be kind of speculated about a couple of days ago, and now
it started really, I think, with the president on ESPN saying that he is encouraging Major League Baseball to move the All-Star game out.
And now you've seen it come to fruition. So this afternoon, no All-Star game, no Major League Baseball draft in Metro Atlanta. We'll come back with more. We have some breaking news. I believe a national honor for a former student athlete in the area. We'll talk about that next. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Back here with you, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. BJ Bennett alongside Christian Gokel. Hope you're doing well on a Friday afternoon. We'll get to some Atlanta Falcons draft talk in just a little bit, and more on the news from Major League Baseball regarding the All-Star Game and MLB draft in Atlanta as well. But Christian, you've had a former local basketball star, student athlete, a local product out of Hinesville, Georgia, Liberty County High School, be one of the stars of this college basketball season. Davion Mitchell, he's the starting point guard for Baylor, who's in the Final Four. And you have Baylor right there with a chance at a national championship. We'll see them take on Houston for a spot in that national title, opposite obviously Gonzaga and UCLA as the Final Four on the men's side gets underway this weekend. But Davion Mitchell recently named the Defensive Player of the Year in college basketball. So a young man out of Liberty County High School in Hinesville. And I believe if you go back a couple of years ago now, you had Will Richardson from Oregon, who obviously played well in the NCAA tournament, Davion Mitchell, who's in the Final Four, and Richard LeCount, Georgia football superstar, all on a state championship Liberty County High School basketball team. So, man, great players coming out of that program, and congratulations to Davion Mitchell, obviously.
I was going to say, what are they feeding those kids at Liberty County? Because obviously they're doing something right. Richard's about to get drafted, and you mentioned Davion Mitchell looking to lead his team to a national championship, already in the Final Four, and won the Naismith Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, Kurt Warner, I know he probably want to get Davion out there as a safety or something, maybe a stand-up outside linebacker for the football team, but that basketball team was something serious.
Yeah, and Mitchell's really fun to watch. Baylor's an up-and-down team. Obviously, they shoot a lot of threes. They really try to get after you offensively, and Davion is the point guard, plays an instrumental role in that, so we'll see what he can do moving forward. But, Christian, we've talked a lot about the Atlanta Falcons, their draft spot at 4. We'll check in with Dave Choate in just a little bit. But D'Orlando Ledbetter had a prediction I think he put out on social media where he said, quote, "I have them staying put and taking BPA, best player available. Fields, Sewell, or Pitts is how I have them ranked. Shanny could stick it to them again and take Fields. If he takes Mac Jones, Falcons get Fields." Your response to that?
I'm kind of with them. That's kind of what I've been saying is if Justin Fields is there and you feel like he's your future quarterback, you feel like the Panthers are a team that could maybe grab him if you don't take him and you don't want to play him twice a year, it's the number 4 overall pick. Go ahead and take him. I think if you feel like he is a good enough quarterback to be your guy going forward, go ahead and take him. Now, if it goes Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, and you're not sold on Trey Lance, which I am not, you don't think Mac Jones is a top 4 pick, which I do not, take the best available player. Who would be the best available at that point? Probably Jamar Chase, Penei Sewell, and Kyle Pitts, right? You have Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, so Jamar Chase probably not going to happen. I feel like the Falcons are actually pretty happy, at least with their tackles, right? With McGarry and Matthews, they think they're pretty set at tackle. Obviously, they need a center now that Alex Max is gone, and they probably need to go get another guard, which they can either get in free agency or address a little bit later in the draft. So, do you take Penei Sewell and see if he can play guard? Do you kick one of the other guys in from the tackle spots to guard? I don't know. I know Penei's going to be amazing. I was looking at his measurements today. Dude's a monster, and it doesn't look like he has – I probably have more body fat than Penei Sewell does, and he weighs 330 pounds. So that leaves Kyle Pitts. And people are like, well, look, BJ's like the Falcons, they already have a great passing attack. They already get all the yards. You have Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, Julio Jones, Hayden Hurst. You got my man Lee Smith, who's ready to get nasty in a phone booth with the offensive lineman, right? Like, do you really need another skill guy? The Falcons are bad in the red zone, man. They are bad. And BJ, can you name another guy in this draft that you could get in free agency who would become a more immediate red zone threat for the Atlanta Falcons than Kyle Pitts? Because I can't. So I think if you're talking about immediate impact, Kyle Pitts is a guy who can convert for you in the red zone. That, to me, would be a huge get for the Falcons.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because with the draft, you always want to have a plan, but there's so much uncertainty that Terry Fontenot and his staff, you have to have multiple plans because the higher you up, the higher up you are in the draft, the more control you have. Obviously, if you're picking 20th overall and that's your first pick, it could get real weird in front of you and you could have no idea what you're doing. Traditionally, when you're at 4, you normally have a pretty simple plan because you have an idea of what's going to happen and you have an idea of what you need. And I think there are so many variables at play for the Falcons. Like you said, what quarterback goes at 3? I think there's a difference if you're Atlanta at 4 and Justin Fields being on the board versus Trey Lance or Mac Jones. I think there's a difference in Penei Sewell being on the board. Even with, like you said, your stability at tackle, maybe Jake Matthews can slip inside to guard. How would you compare and contrast potentially needing a Penei Sewell versus the value of a Kyle Pitts? I mean, it's a really difficult kind of comparison to make. And then something I've mentioned as an option really since the beginning is you have so many holes defensively. You desperately need a cornerback 1. You need to basically restock the shelves at safety. You're still looking for an edge rusher. I know they would like to have a kind of a more consistent presence next to Grady Jarrett along the interior of the defensive line. If you do run a 4-3, if you run a 3-4 under Coach Pease, I mean, you're going to have to kind of reconfigure things anyway along the front 7. But would it make sense at 4 to look at a quarterback hungry team that wants to trade up and basically fleece them and say, okay, you want to get Trey Lance? Or if it is Justin Fields, you're going to give us a first round and a second round in the future. You're going to give us your first round pick, your second round pick, your third round pick, and you all of a sudden become much more dynamic and deep in terms of your draft assets. So there's a lot to consider.
But does it become a bird in the hand at that point, right? Where you're like, I know what I can have in Kyle Pitts versus who are you trading with to jump up to that 4 spot? Because you're not, if I'm there, you're not giving it to the Carolina Panthers. I don't care if they offer you every first round pick for the next decade. You don't give it to the Carolina Panthers because you don't hand your division rival their franchise quarterback for the next 15 or 20 years. You just don't do it. So at that point, who becomes the team that jumps up for the quarterback? Is it the Patriots? Well, at that point, you're dropping back to 15. And how much are the Patriots willing to give up to jump up for their quarterback? And when all you've heard this offseason is about how they didn't feel like they had given Cam enough and they don't blame last year on Cam Newton. I mean, who else are you giving it to? Could it be the Bears? Well, then you're really dropping back to like number 20 overall in the draft. And your Kyle Pitts, Penei Sewell, all of that's gone versus you have your pick of the litter at that point. And I think Kyle Pitts is so good now that my plan had been for since the draft order came out was ask the Bengals how much Penei Sewell's worth to them. I think Kyle Pitts is so good that if it was Pitts and Sewell on the board for them, they might take Pitts at this point. That's just how good he is. He's pretty much consensus number 2 on everybody's draft board right behind Trevor Lawrence now. So if I'm the Falcons at this point right now, I'm probably hanging pat at number 4. And like D Orlando says, if Fields is gone, just take your pick between Sewell and Pitts and be really happy about it.
Yeah, either guy would be a foundational piece. I think in terms of a potential trade, I agree with you. And I've seen sort of suggestions online. Oh, the Panthers need to. No, you don't give your division rival an opportunity to draft a franchise quarterback directly because of your decision. No, that's a terrible call. I'm with you. You don't trade with the Panthers, period. Sorry, deal with it. I think maybe you look at potentially Denver. Seems like, at least from reports, they're in the quarterback market. I know they have Drew Lock, but would they be tempted to move up? I think if you want to go a little further down in the first round, I know Washington football team's really interested. I think they're at 19, and you've seen some reports that they really like some of the quarterbacks. And again, I would not make a trade, especially given that you would likely be turning down Penei Sewell or Kyle Pitts. I would not make a trade for a modest return. If I'm making a trade at 4, you're giving me value after value after value. You're giving me, obviously, your pick in the first round before we even have a conversation, your second and third round pick this year, and then at least a first for next year as the starting point. And then if you want to get into, a 2023 second or something like that. But I think that would be something to really consider, especially given the depth of this draft. Again, I obviously agree with you that let's say you trade with even Denver, who's at 9 or 10? I think 9. If you trade down to 9, you're not getting Sewell and you're not getting Pitts. Okay. If you trade down to 19, you're most certainly not getting any of the elite playmakers. But at 9 or 19, could a Christian Barmore be there? Could a Gregory Rousseau be there? Could a Patrick Surtain, a J.C. Horn, to address kind of glaring holes you have on your depth chart defensively? That's what makes this so fascinating, is there are so many choices. And Christian, whether you talk about Pitts or Sewell, whether you talk about taking Fields or whether you talk about trading down, assuming you get a fair return, I think there are many choices, and I think in some ways they're all good choices.
just kind of reading the tea leaves, though, D-Led put this out as well. The 49ers contacted the Falcons about that fourth pick. And based off of what we heard, it wasn't for as much as Miami got for the third, obviously, because I just put you in a different realm when it comes to you now control Justin Fields, if that's the way you want to go. The Falcons turned down the 49ers for that fourth overall pick. So, I mean, do with that what you will. To me, that says they're staying put and they're picking their best available player at number 4. I just, God forbid, it's their fourth best quarterback. Like if you have Justin Fields as your number 2 quarterback and he winds up at number 4, yeah, you take him. But if Trey Lance is your fourth quarterback and Wilson, Lawrence, and Fields are gone, please go with Pitts or Sewell. Like, just for the love of God, don't take the fourth best player at a position with the 4th overall pick in the draft. That's all I'm asking from the Atlanta Falcons, because you just laid out a lot of really good plans, BJ, a lot of ways this can go really right. Still the Atlanta Falcons, and there's a lot of ways this can go really, really wrong, and we could be having a meltdown on the Friday following that first round. But I'm trying to be optimistic because everything I base the Falcons decision making off of is Dan Quinn and Thomas Dimitroff decision making. They're not there anymore, man. We got to get with TF. We got to go with old Terry Fontenot and see what that decision making looks like. Arthur Smith, I like him. He rocks the dad jeans when he goes and scouts guys. I think it's cool. He's wearing the tennis shoes jeans combo out there. So I've got some faith in my man Arthur as well. You got the 2 Arthurs in charge of the franchise now. So I'm trying not to hold previous relationships against our new relationship, but it's hard, man, because we've been burned so many times.
It's a lot to weigh, including the psychology of the Falcons messing up drafts in the past. Like you said,
so
new
like,
leadership.
How many Jamal Andersons can we take? And not the
yeah,
good,
well, not only messing up draft picks, but I mean, you had a significant lead in the Super Bowl that you can talk about too. I mean, when you're in a good position, you just let it slip. But about Fields, because I think this is the key point that a lot of people debate back and forth. And I know y'all talked about it on Second Down, but if you draft Justin Fields, who's one of the most famous quarterbacks in America, I mean, college, pro, whatever, do you do so with the clear and basically just obvious understanding that not only is he not going to be the starter in 2021, but because of the dead money for 2022, he's basically not playing in a starting role, barring injury or a dramatic decline for 2 years?
I think a lot of it depends on Matt Ryan's performance, which we have no indicator over the past few years that Matt Ryan would do anything but be a top 7 to 10 quarterback in the NFL, which if you're a rookie quarterback and you're going to beat that out, good luck. But I would say you're definitely seeing Matt Ryan as a starter this year. I don't know about next year. I don't know if they're maybe willing to eat that dead money and just get something back for Matt Ryan instead of having nothing for him the year following that. I don't know. I think more and more it's looking like Matt Ryan's the guy for the next 2 years, which is why I'm saying we could be seeing Pitts or Sewell in this situation right here. I mean, the other thing you got to factor in here, BJ, Justin Fields doesn't do well when he's having to sit. I mean, we've already seen that in the state of Georgia. He has to sit for 1 year, man. He's ready to transfer. So could we see Justin Fields demanding a trade year 1 when he doesn't get on the field behind Matt Ryan, maybe a transfer to a team up in Ohio? Who knows?
We'll see what the Atlanta Falcons do.
Doesn't do well.
And sitting there at 4, they're going to have options. As you said, it may take a lot. It may take a lot for them to move on that number 4 spot. But Dave Choate will join us coming up later in the show from the Falcoholic.
Wait, BJ, wait. Just bear with me here. You got Matt Ryan. You draft Justin Fields. You still need a backup, right? Because old Matt Schaub has retired. You need somebody to go sling the ball around. I think Jake Fromm's just like hanging out on a couch somewhere just for the stories. Can we bring him in as a camp invitee, just a guy to go out there and sling the rock, just for the stories? Come on.
Hey, look, I was thinking they should trade for Gardner Minshew. I mean, that's what I was thinking about. We'll come back. You have a unique, and you were explaining it to me because I didn't see it. I just love the way you described it to me in the show meeting, talking about what happened with Cody Bellinger's home run. We'll let you do that next. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Back here with you, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. And Christian, you had, in addition to opening day, you had some highlights, some walk-offs and whatnot yesterday. You also had kind of a strange, quirky situation with a Cody Bellinger home run, and you explained it to me. I did not see it yesterday, but basically to sum it up, he went back behind a runner that was right.
You're close.
The runner that was in front of him went back behind him. So, I don't know. Explain it.
All right, so the Dodgers lost in their season over to the Rockies yesterday, 8-5. But in the third inning, Josh Turner's on first base. Cody Bellinger's up to bat, and Cody Bellinger ropes one to left center field, and it looks like it goes over the wall. The defender goes up, hits the outfielder in the glove, and Josh Turner, standing on first base, sees the ball go off of Cody Bellinger's bat, takes off, right? But he's watching, because you got to watch. What if the defender makes a great play? He's watching, sees the ball go into the outfielder's glove, but what he doesn't see is the ball leaks out of the outfielder's glove into the stands. Now, there's usually something the players can see to help them with this. It's the fans going crazy, right? They see a home run, everybody's diving for the ball. You can see that. All right, it's a home run. I keep running. Well, the fan who is sort of standing along the railing just kind of nonchalantly picks the ball up. So there's really no reaction from the crowd. You're in a away stadium. You hit a home run. It kind of just went over the wall and a guy picks it up. Nobody's going crazy. So Josh Turner, thinking that the outfielder caught it, turns around and starts sprinting back to first base to avoid getting doubled up. Cody Bellinger, seeing the ump do the hand twirl, knowing it's a home run, just keeps jogging and then kind of like turns and watches Josh Turner come sprinting by him back to first base. Well, there's a rule in baseball. You can't pass, or the runner can't pass each other, or it's an out from the guy who is at bat. And so it was going to be a 2-run home run for the Los Angeles Dodgers, turns into an RBI single for Cody Bellinger. And the best part of this is Chris Owings, who was the second baseman, gets credit for the putout, even though he did absolutely nothing on the play. He just stood there at second base, watched a ball go to the outfield, but because he was the closest player to Josh Turner sprinting past Cody Bellinger, he got a putout.
That's outstanding. And that kind of reminds me in soccer. I don't know if the rule has changed, but like sometimes when there's an own goal, it'd be like the nearest player closest to the ball. So you get a goal in the box score when you literally didn't even touch the ball. So yeah. Welcome back, baseball. That was interesting. I mean, I understand it, but it's so convoluted. Like I can't even explain it. I can't even recall it.
It was amazing to watch.
I mean, that was, and you had all kinds of stuff. You had Miguel Cabrera hitting a home run in the snow. Is it snowing up in Detroit? So the Braves lost yesterday in extra innings. I don't like the extra innings rule. We'll talk about that more, where you have a runner on second base. But Braves back at it, off today, obviously back at it this weekend. We'll come back with more draft talk coming your way. 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, ESPNCoastal.com. Glad to have you back here with us for 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network on a Friday afternoon. A lot to get to here on the program. More on Major League Baseball's decision to remove the draft and the All-Star game from the city of Atlanta. We'll also look ahead to the Final Four and talk NFL draft. We'll get some more insight on the Atlanta Falcons and where they may be leaning with that number 4 overall pick and beyond. But every day at this time, we take 3. And Christian, I believe we are bringing in the great PJ Zuko to help us take 3 here on a Friday.
Well, we're bringing in PJ Zuko, and now I know why. With the first question, Christian, you're gonna have to help me. I'm not gonna lie, I don't watch a lot of.
Kiteg Pliav.
Okay, there you go. Take 1. MMA fighter Kiteg Pliav.
Nailed
His
it.
finger was severed during the second round of the fight on Tuesday night. It was surgically and medically reattached. If your sport is severing your digits, is it time to pick a new sport?
Yeah, I mean, that's not for me. I don't know that I'm like the most competitive guy ever. I like playing basketball, stuff like that. But in terms of, hey, my finger's getting severed and I got to get this, addressed so I can come back out there. First off, the whole idea of MMA, where people are punching you in the face and putting you in arm bars and all kind. I mean, I understand that's kind of a different level of competition than most sports. I get that. I appreciate that. I'm sure the mindset and the perspective is, on another level. But Christian, I'm just being real, man. Talk about cutting off fingers. That's probably not for me. I appreciate it. I can respect it, but that's not for me.
I mean, you hear the story of NFL guys who have ripped off parts of their fingers because it was already broken. They're like, I ain't going to the hospital. Just go ahead and take that bad boy. I don't need it. And we'll get it going. I mean, you see the different NFL players' hands when they get done with their careers, and it's nuts. But actually, a finger popping off during your sport, and let's think about what it is. It's a sport, right? But these are these guys' jobs. So outside of the sport themselves, if your job is causing you to lose digits, is it maybe time for a new job? And there's probably some landscapers out there listening right now. Listen, sometimes that weed whacker gets a little wild and it hits the finger and that finger's gone. And you know what? You just got to keep trucking because we got to put bread on the table, right? I get it. If you're passionate about it, you got 9 more fingers, man. You're still good to go. The only ones you really got to protect are that index finger and the thumb. But if you're passionate about it and it's providing a living for you, you go with however many digits you can lose, and it keeps making you happy.
See, that's what I was thinking this whole time. Is it's a matter of perspective, right? If you're asking one of us, of course we're going to quit that job and move on and go. You go ask one of these guys. You go ask one of those offensive linemen. Hey, if this happens to you, are you done? No, it's just it's an everyday thing for them.
Kevin doesn't pay me enough to lose fingers.
No. Yeah, exactly. But in their perspective, man, they are completely prepared to lose whatever they need to lose as long as they beat the other dude on the other side of that mat, of the octagon, whatever they're fighting in that night. So I think generally it's just a matter of perspective. But let's face it, to me, these guys are very smart, very intelligent, very impressive. They're also insane. To be able to get into a ring, an octagon, whatever, and do that, put your body on the line, requires a certain level of craziness to me. So at the end of the day, this guy's probably wearing this like a battle scar, man.
Yeah, I mean, and if you think about it, losing a finger is losing a finger. Losing an arm didn't stop Michael Nub Nelson from Valdosta from trying to bring down college football. So
let's go.
Just it's all about perspective.
No doubt. With that, we move on to take 2. Vegas has set the Falcons win total at 7 games. 7 games. You taking the over, the under on that?
I don't feel great about it either way because there are a lot of questions on a talented team. The Falcons are a contradiction. It's they're really talented, but they rarely play up to their ability. But I think you've had so many just weeks of poor play that don't make sense and close losses that I kind of expect that to bounce back a little bit. And you're not talking about, winning 12, 13 games. I mean, you could top that mark and still have a losing record. So I look at Atlanta. I think the ball is going to bounce back in their court a little bit. I expect them to get better one way or another after this draft. And maybe that means significantly better given how good this draft is. And I know that applies to everybody, but Atlanta has a pick at 4. If they go quarterback, maybe the impact isn't as direct. But if you get Penei Sewell or Kyle Pitts, I mean, you're significantly better right away. So for a team that probably has gotten kind of a mathematical share that's unfair of bad luck on the field, I think some of that's going to bounce back. So I don't feel great about it, but I look in the division. I think the Saints are going to take a significant step back. I think that Carolina is probably in a significant rebuilding mode. The Bucs are the Bucs, but I think you feel like on paper you are the second best team in your division. So I'll say, give me over.
You're missing the most important part of this. The divisions that the Falcons are playing this year, the NFC East, who didn't have a team above 500 last year, and the AFC East. That's who you got. And also the 2 more additional games you got thrown in there, the Detroit Lions, and then a bonus of the Jacksonville Jaguars on your schedule. I mean, this schedule lines up really well for the Atlanta Falcons. As you mentioned, a pretty down NFC South. I'd say relatively. The Saints aren't going to be what they were in the past. The Panthers are still trying to rebuild. The Buccaneers are going to be pretty good. I don't know that they'll be Super Bowl good again, but they're going to be a playoff team good again. So, yeah, I think with the divisions you're having to play and your own division, yeah, I think 7's the minimum for what you should be shooting for. If you're the Atlanta Falcons with an established quarterback, multiple established wide receivers, I think this is absolutely way above 7.
Yeah, I would have to go there too. But then again, I mean, as BJ was talking about, they're a walking contradiction. Are the Atlanta Falcons?
Are you calling the Atlanta Falcons the Auburn of the NFL?
Basically, to me, every year I go in, since the Super Bowl run, every year I've gone in and be like, oh, they're all right. You know, if there's a team that's going to be all right in the NFL after losing like that, you know, it's going to be the Falcons. They got so much talent, and then just dud after dud after
PJ,
dud.
we talked about this. You're using Dan Quinn and Thomas Dimitroff logic. They're gone.
Yeah, no.
Get on the Terry Fontenot train, PJ.
And that's where I'm going. That's where I'm going, right? I'm going to bring back something that I don't think I've heard BJ use in a long time, but it used to be just in his arsenal every single day. The law of averages, right? The Falcons.
Are you saying they're going to regress to the mean?
No, I'm saying the Falcons have played this trick on everybody in Atlanta and around Atlanta for the past 5 years, right? Yeah, guys, we're going to be good. We got so much talent on the team. Okay, no, we're not that good. We have another losing season. This is the year. It's been so many years in a row.
He's talking about a market correction.
Actually translate to the field.
There you go.
But sorry, I didn't hear what he said.
Market correction. He's right. It's a market correction. Yep.
Absolutely. If there's a year to do it, it's going to be this year for the Falcons.
Eventually, that Falcon stock is going to rebound, is what you're saying.
Absolutely, right. No doubt about it. Just got to believe in it. Just put some more money in it. No. At the end, let's move on from
diamond
that.
Hands.
I'm not very good with all that stuff. But let's move on. Take 3. And I heard you talking about this earlier. I could have figured it would have been in here, and can't wait to hear you guys' answer for this one. What would be on your Masters Champion dinner menu? Now, listen, there's a lot of different options here that you have to figure out. All right,
a full meal.
You have an appetizer. That's it. Some people think full meal, and they're just like, all right, appetizer, meal, dessert. Right? No. Appetizer, first course, sides, main course, dessert. BJ, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I didn't even realize there were this many layers to it. I didn't know there was a first course and then a main course.
What's your app, BJ?
I didn't know. Okay, app, I'm going crab stew. All right, I love crab stew, and you know I think that's something that's one of my favorites. You have a lot of different restaurants that I've been to over the years who have great crab stew in coastal Georgia, so I'm going to go with that. First course, I think you're talking about fried shrimp. Okay, I'm going to keep it consistent. Fried shrimp. If you don't like fried shrimp, you're doing it wrong. Okay, fried shrimp is a specialty. I think we have great, wild shrimp off the Georgia coast. So I think you're talking about fried shrimp making sense for me. And then if you're talking about sides, Kevin would be proud of me because I'm not going to do anything that's necessarily healthy or has vegetables. You got to have hush puppies. I'm going to go with that. And then you're talking about cheese grits. All right. Cheese grits goes with all that stuff perfectly. And I know PJ's not a grits expert being from up north, but I'm going to go with the cheese grits. I think those are on a different level even than the regular
cheese, equal parts grit, right?
Yep. Different level than even the regular grits. Main course, I mean, I'm going to go with fried catfish. I'm going to keep it fried. I'm going to keep it fried. I'm going to tie it all in. I'm going to tie it all together. If you have fried catfish, you have to have cheese grits, like they're related, that you have to have them. So look, I'm not saying this is going to be healthy. I'm not saying this is going to be a very kind of diverse menu in terms of you get the greens and you get the, the dietary vitamins and minerals you need. I'm not saying that. All right. This is probably not going to be overly healthy, but that's what I'm going with. And then dessert, I'm going to go peach cobbler. Just shut it down. Peach cobbler, maybe get you a scoop of ice cream on the top, and there it is.
See, I'm going to change my answer from second down because I realized something about myself. I'm someone who likes to educate people with stuff. Like, I'm not just going to pick a movie. I'm going to try to pick a movie I feel like you need to see. Same with like books and TV series and stuff like that. So if I had my own master's dinner, I want to educate the folks who aren't from the South about some of our culinary expertise. So like, with the appetizer, I'm starting with biscuits and gravy. Like, I'm starting with some buttermilk biscuits, country gravy. And you know what? For my people from Atlanta, you can either have the country gravy or you can have the red-eye gravy, which if you don't know what red-eye gravy is, look it up. It'll change your life. So that's
a strong and heavy appetizer.
That's what we're starting with for the app. Now, when you get to the main course, I'm gonna stick with what I was saying, but I'm also going to give you some sub options off of it. Really good fried chicken. Like, that's going to be my main course, is just elite level fried chicken. There's some folks around here who I know make some elite level fried chicken. So if Augusta needed to bring in and outsource that to have some folks fry it up, I know some folks who will take care of that. Up some of the homies up in Darien know what's up when I'm talking about that. But for the sides, mac and cheese, and I need like the mac and cheese that's in a pan in the oven with extra cheese on top, crispy on top. So you want the corner piece because you want kind of that burnt charred piece of cheese. Mac and cheese and collard greens for the side with some more biscuits to go with it, right? I think that's what you got to do. In terms of the first course, I'm not against a wedge salad or a garden salad, something like that. But dessert, BJ, is where we're going to get serious because we're going to do the soft serve ice cream bar. I don't care if Augusta National has to bring in soft serve machines from outside and outsource that. I need a full soft serve ice cream machine with a bar with the peanuts, the Oreos, the M&Ms, the gummy bears, all of it. I need all of that, chocolate sauce, caramel sauce, all of it there because we're getting serious with some soft serve ice cream.
I like it. Everybody has good memories of soft serve ice cream. You just go to town. It's never ending. It's like magic.
When you go to the buffet, you eat like enough real food for your parents to be like, fine, go.
It's fantastic. Hey, wait, am I required to have one here or what?
Yes.
Yeah. To do anything, PJ. This is America.
All right, I've been thinking about one, so let's go ahead and try it. I'll start off the top. Let me go appetizer here. I love. All right, we're gonna go fried shrimp, or one of my all-time favorites, fried calamari.
You can have both.
Why not have both? Why not have both?
What are we dipping it in?
Go have both. With the shrimp, of course, you got the
cocktails,
the red
tartar.
Sauce, cocktail sauce,
yep.
Yeah, for sure. You have that, and then with the calamari, you got the classic horseradish sauce, right?
Okay.
You go ahead.
I kind of like some of the sweet, tangy Asian sauces with that as well.
Okay, understand. I don't know if I've had that before, to be honest with you, but just love the calamari, and I'm willing to go ahead and try whatever else you want to bring out. For the first course, I've been trying this more and more as I've lived down here, and that's the great barbecue places from around South Georgia. Let's have some great barbecue as the first. What is the main meat? Because there's a lot of different barbecue out there. Like we're talking pork. We're talking
brisket.
Pork. Yeah, for sure. No, I'm all about pork. Yeah, I understand the brisket. I understand it. Chicken and everything else. I love some barbecue pork.
All right.
So we're gonna go with that. Not too heavy though, and we're not gonna make it a sandwich. Not too heavy. All right. So with the sides, you're gonna go with some sweet potato. With
some yams.
Yeah. With a steak. Just strict American steak.
Well, maybe a nice American steak.
Maybe a nice ribeye in there for it. Not go too crazy with it.
Talking black Angus.
I'm a man. I love simplicity. At the end of the day, the best dinner I can have is a steak and some sweet potato. Just love it. Maybe some cottage cheese there on the side as well. But I'm not gonna have that here because I know that's controversial. But for the main course, nice ribeye steak and some sweet potato. Put whatever you want on there. Some butter, some Brown sugar
Cinnamon.
mixed in there as well, some cinnamon. Oh man, you can really dress up that sweet potato. And then at the end, kind of gonna throw a curveball in here, but my favorite dessert of all time, tiramisu.
I mean, I could have called that.
Got to have that tiramisu at the end. You love the coffee flavor. You love the dessert that you have. Oh my god, it's so good. It's fluffy, but it's enough at the same
You're
time.
mixing
like,
a lot of different
much.
cuisines there, man. Like you're mixing.
I don't even know what that is. I don't even know what tiramisu is.
BJ,
Really?
you want to change your life while going into a diabetic shock?
It is a coffee flavored,
Like moist
kind of
cake.
kind of like cream cake consistency type of thing. It's fantastic.
It'll change your life. It melts in your mouth when done properly.
All right, so
Absolutely,
just to confirm, we're talking about basically wet cake that tastes like coffee. Okay, all right. On that
BJ,
note,
then I know you love
Come
coffee.
on now.
on that note, I'm just giving you a hard time. Thank you, BJ.
Hold on. We're pulling up a picture for you.
Oh man.
All right.
Oh,
goodness
wow.
That'll help everybody
That's a good
listening on the radio.
You
That's a good one.
talk about doing it right. That's how you do it right.
This is from our friends at the New York Times cooking section. Let's share the screen here for BJ. Because you got like the little like fried fingerling things in the middle there.
Ooh.
Okay. Yeah. I'll give it a go. I'm just teasing y'all. I'll give it a go.
Man.
It looks nice. Looks very flavorful.
Does Publix do good tiramisu?
Yeah, they actually also have, as long as they still have it, it's been a couple years, but tiramisu ice cream. They used to. Oh my god,
that's a lot. If I'm
Really,
doing
really
ice
good.
cream, I'm doing ice cream. If I'm doing tiramisu, I'm doing tiramisu. I don't need to combine these things.
Very short story for y'all, by the way. I can't lie about this. The first, I took an Italian language class in college for a few semesters, got through it, obviously passed it. My first test, I was like,
Oh,
all
way to
right.
brag.
I was like, let's celebrate this. It's an online test at home. Had tiramisu while taking the test. You know your boy got like 95.
All right, we get it. You were good in college, PJ. Jeez.
All right, PJ smarter than all of us. On that note, we got to go to break. Clemson spring game is tomorrow. We'll discuss that next. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Back here with you, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network on a Friday afternoon. BJ Bennett alongside Christian Gokel. We appreciate PJ Zuko checking in as well. We will talk Falcons draft in just a little bit with Dave Choate of the Falcoholic at the number 4 spot. A lot of options, but Clemson, want to talk some college football. Christian will have its spring game tomorrow and talk about what this means in terms of being a consistent superpower. You're going to lose the number 1 overall pick in Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, Travis Etienne is one of the greatest running backs in college football history. Both of those guys may end up going in the first round, but you lose a multi-year all-time kind of quarterback and a multi-year starter, all-time great quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, multi-year all-time great starter in Travis Etienne. And I guess people are just expecting more of the same offensively, and rightfully so.
Well, them and Alabama, right? Alabama's the consensus number 1 team for next year, and you don't know who their starting quarterback or starting runner. You don't know, right? Quote unquote, you don't know. But the same really is for Clemson in terms of replacing Travis Etienne. You don't know if they have that guy that can just carry the bulk of the load. But when I look at Clemson, BJ, I'm not worried about quarterbacks because they've proven over the past decade that they're going to have an elite quarterback. They're going to have Taj Boyd. They're going to have Deshaun Watson. They're going to have Trevor Lawrence, right? And maybe there's a year in between there, but for the most part, you pretty much trust Dabo's going to have an elite quarterback. I think they got it pretty much figured out with Will Shipley or Lynn J. Dixon there at running back, where I want to see Clemson take that next step because they're going to have to, is at the lines of scrimmage. I think the offensive line and defensive line are where you need to see Clemson take that next step because both of them were pretty underwhelming last year. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they were young, but just based off of what you've seen Clemson do in the past, right? Travis Etienne doesn't become the ACC's all-time leading rusher without playing behind a really good offensive line, right? You don't put player after player after player into the NFL draft on the defensive line without having really good players. But the last time we saw Clemson's defense out there, Trey Sermon almost ran for 200 by himself. Like they were consistently getting gashed, got no pressure on Justin Fields, and were leaving their secondary out to dry. So with a new quarterback, with a new running back, those lines of scrimmage are really going to have to help them out. So that's what I'm going to be watching on Saturday.
Yeah, I think it's a very fair point about the offensive line where Jackson Carman, their star offensive tackles in the draft. So in addition to the fact that maybe you weren't as consistent as you have been game to game last year, you lose your best tackle and a guy that's probably going to be a second round pick. Defensively, I don't share your same concern with the defensive line. I agree it was not a great performance against Ohio State, clearly. But you even with an outlier at the end of the season, you still finished second in the ACC in rush defense and 15th nationally. So you still had a top 15 rush defense, and you were second in the nation in tackles for loss. And you did that with 2 true freshmen starting. You know, to me, that's more of an affirmation of Clemson's defensive line because I don't know how many, and maybe Alabama, but I don't know how many groups in the country you could say we're going to start a true freshman at defensive end, a true freshman at defensive tackle, and you're going to have a top 15 rush defense and rank second nationally in tackles for loss. And a lot of that is the constant talent Clemson brings in. A lot of it is Brent Venables and the scheme utilizing that talent. I believe, and I may be a year or two off, I'll try to double check it. I can't read and talk at the same time, but I believe seven of the last 8 years, Clemson is ranked first or second in the nation in tackles for loss. And the years, the 1 year that they weren't 1 or 2, they were like 5. So you're talking about every year just elite disruptors at the line of scrimmage. And the 2 guys that were true freshmen last year, Brian Bresee and Myron Murphy, both ended up being all ACC. So I think those guys are now foundational pieces. I believe when ESPN.com came out with its way too early All-American team, you had both Murphy and Bresee on there. So one half of the starting defensive line was from Clemson. I think if you're looking at Clemson and maybe some relative question marks, again, it's Clemson, okay, but relative question marks, I'm looking at corner because you don't have Darion Kendrick. And he was an all ACC, depending upon what outlet you look at, All-American type cover corner, multi-year starter, NFL body, 6'1", and now he's gone. And I know you have Andrew Booth and some other guys you like, but I don't know that Clemson is the same defensively. And Christian, what's interesting about Clemson's defense is if you go back right when the first wave of the way too early top 25s were coming out, Clemson was bringing back every single starter on defense coming back. Well, since that point, you've had Darion Kendrick leave the program, and linebacker Mike Jones transfer to LSU. So maybe you look a little bit different defensively now than you did 2 months ago, but I would look at that number one corner spot.
Yeah. I mean, defending the defensive line, I think it's fair because they were young, but I'd be careful with the stats, comparing them to other teams last year, because a lot of the Big Ten teams only played 6 games and some of them played 5. So when you're saying they're second in the country in tackles for loss, there are a lot of teams out there that only played half as many games as them. So I don't necessarily look at that as much. They had a really, really good.
But if you go tackles for loss per game, they were third.
No, there you go. But I mean, still, when you're looking at some of the bigger games they played, Ohio State ran for 254 on the ground against them. Notre Dame ran for 208 yards yards and 5.2 yards per carry in that game. Syracuse ripped off 4.7 yards per carry. So the rushing defense was, I'm not, again, it's all relative, right? They played in the college football playoff and lost to Ohio State, but it's not what Clemson has been in the past, I guess is my point. But again, eventually Alabama last year had a okay defense by standards of Alabama defenses in the past. A lot of people think they're going to be a lot better this year. Why? They're young. They had a bunch of freshmen starting for Alabama on defense. When do you ever see that? Same things for Clemson. Brian Bresee was a freshman last year. The dude's just going to get bigger, stronger, and faster. So they'll be better this year. But that's who I have my eye on. And a lot of people watch football different ways, BJ. Most people watch the quarterback on the snaps, right? A lot of people like to watch the wide receivers when the snap goes off. I stare at the line of scrimmage because I think 9 out of 10 games, you can figure out who's going to win that football game based on what's happening with those 9 to 10 dudes up front. And Clemson last year against Ohio State couldn't get a pass rush and couldn't open up lanes. So you knew Ohio State had a distinct advantage in that game. And we were talking about this before the show. Clemson better buckle up because that first game of the season, if you want to talk about a line of scrimmage test, University of Georgia's coming to Charlotte, and they got a bunch of dudes coming back on that defensive line, and they have a bunch of 4 or 5-star blue chippers on that offensive line that are going to put Clemson's line of scrimmage to the test.
No, I agree. And look, it's Clemson, okay? Clemson is no stranger to big games, but I do think that even in a place like Clemson, when you open with Georgia, and that's probably the regular season game of the year, like by far, I think that adds I think that adds a different level of intensity to spring ball. Just real quick, we got to get to Dave Choate, but do you think it's fair? I mean, it was one start last year, but my heavens, he was great. To just project DJ Uiagalelei is going to be right there in that 3,500 yard, 4,000 yard Heisman Trophy kind of conversation?
Yeah, especially if Justin Ross is back because that dude's different. But Clemson recruits wide receivers really well. It's the school of Sammy Watkins and guys like that. So, I mean, I think DeAndre Hopkins, I think Clemson's going to be fine passing the ball through the air. I'm curious what they're going to do on the ground, though, because that's how you lose big games is if you become one-dimensional. And last year, Travis Etienne was getting hit after 1.8 yards per carry on average. So he wasn't even getting 2 yards before he was getting hit. He is one of the, like you said, one of the best running backs ever. I don't know if we can say the same about the guys they have there right now. So Clemson's going to have to figure some stuff out in terms of pass blocking and run blocking if they're going to get back to where they have been.
The Clemson spring game will be tomorrow, and that's a team that will probably be preseason number 1 when the polls come around. We'll come back with more. We'll talk Falcons next. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. BJ Bennett, Christian Gokel here with you on a Friday afternoon, 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hope you're doing well. Glad to have you with us. The Atlanta Falcons in a really unique spot. Obviously going to get a good player at number 4, even good players if they potentially trade down in what is a very deep draft. And with us now to talk about the Atlanta Falcons and where they stand from the Falcoholic, Dave Choate. Dave, good afternoon. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing good. Thank you so much for coming on the program. What's Atlanta want to happen? What's kind of the best case scenario for Atlanta here in the Falcons' minds at number 4 overall?
I think given the way the board is expected to line up, I think it's probably a quarterback they love falling to them. You know, I don't know if that's Justin Fields or Trey Lance at the end of the day, but I really think that every indication we've gotten to this point is that this team really would like to solve quarterback long term. No slight to Matt Ryan, as great as he's been, but this is a new regime looking at a 36-year-old quarterback and saying, let's try something different, going forward. So I think that's the best case scenario for them, is that they get the guy they want. I think their second best case scenario is, darn, we have to pick maybe the most athletic tight end that's come out in the last 30 years. So they're really in a good spot here, one way or the other. If they were really hoping the best guy on the board was going to be a defender, okay, maybe they're not so happy.
Dave, I was going to ask, I know you and Orlando Ledbetter were interacting with some fans on Twitter, and the conversation was around that 4th pick, and really the draft seemed like you pretty much had 1, 2, and 3 solidified, and this is going to be what the Falcons do, and then the 49ers hop up there, and all of a sudden Mac Jones has become potentially a top 3 pick. If the Falcons do have Fields, Sewell, and Kyle Pitts up there, it's Fields, right?
In my mind, it is. And, it's one of those things, we don't have a great feel for this front office and this team yet. Terry Fontenot's never been a GM before now, so we don't really know what he's thinking. But based on the reporting we've seen, based on the conversations that this team has had, they would, I think, love to solve this for the long haul. They want a guy who they think is going to be a great quarterback. They want somebody who could be a fit for the next decade plus if everything goes really well for Arthur Smith and company. And I think that's Fields. I think, the knocks on Fields are overblown. I think, I would expect San Francisco to seriously consider him at 3. If he gets to the Falcons at 4, I don't think they hesitate all that long before they go get him.
Dave Choate, the Falcoholic, here with us on 3 and Out, talking Falcons draft. Is there a scenario, depending upon what goes on in front of them, where the Atlanta Falcons look to trade down?
Yeah, I think there is. I think for me, it's so much about the value you get in return. So to me, if let's say Fields is their guy, Fields goes at number 3, you're left looking at Lance, you're looking at, Pitts, Sewell. I think they'd happily take one of those guys at 4. But, if the Broncos, let's say, come up with this blockbuster deal because they absolutely have to have Trey Lance or Mac Jones, we'll say, and they're going to give Atlanta, a war chest of picks, potentially multiple first rounders. I'd love to think that they would give an offer like that, even if it might be a little bit rich. Atlanta has to consider that, I think, because you got to set this team up for the long haul. Their cap situation gets a little bit easier. Next year, it's not necessarily easy across the board until 2023. So if you can infuse this roster with a lot of talent right now, it's got to be a serious consideration, I think, especially if they're not ultimately sold on, let's say, Lance and Mac Jones as their quarterback options there.
And Kyle Pitts and Penei Sewell, I think a lot of people have them as 2, 3 in terms of their draft boards, just where they rank in general with all of the prospects. And I know the Falcons sitting there at 4. If Matt Ryan's going to be your quarterback for the next 2 years, if you're looking at the possibility of picking your 4th quarterback on your board with the 4th overall pick in the draft, I've seen a lot of people kind of push back against Kyle Pitts, right? Because they're like, Matt Ryan and this offense, they haven't been the problem. Why would you go out and get another weapon when you have to address defense and there's so many other spots you could address? I look at the offense and I say, yeah, they're really good between the 20s, but when it comes to actually scoring points, this offense has struggled mightily. I think Kyle Pitts can fix a lot of that.
Yeah, I don't disagree either. And I think one thing that can't be underrated is, if they're comfortable with Matt Ryan going forward for 2 or even 3 years, and maybe they'll get creative with his contract going forward again. The way that I look at it with Pitts is he is that kind of talent. Arthur Smith loves tight ends. We know that. We know that he went to Kyle Pitts' pro day without Fontenot, I think, who was at LSU. So, there's an interest level there. Pitts would be that ideal weapon. But I also think the thing that doesn't get talked about as much is that, for Arthur Smith, it's a point of pride that he's going to make this offense better with his scheming. I really think that the expectation is that Smith can get a lot more out of the personnel that are on this team than Dirk Cutter did. So, I think he's going to be awfully attracted to the idea of Kyle Pitts here. And I think that if this team is willing to wait out the quarterback piece for a little bit, Pitts should be the pick. But I also think they don't need Pitts necessarily to become a much better scoring offense in the red zone. I think they just really needed to switch up the coaching.
Obviously, Atlanta's there at 4, Dave. What about once we get past the first round? Does Atlanta have any hopes, plans? Is the best player available largely, or do they have specific areas of need they want to address?
Yeah, let's say they get their quarterback at number 4. And so that's more of a long-term need. They think they've got the best player available. From there, I think, you still have to think a little bit about need. Because to my mind, they've filled all these positions with guys that are solid depth options. Maybe they start in a pinch, but you really don't want to roll into the season, I don't think, with the safety options you have today, necessarily with the left guard and center options you have with no competition. So I do expect the Falcons to think, a little bit about need. And if maybe the second or third best player on their board happens to fit one of those major needs, that's something they'll definitely fill. If they don't get that quarterback right away, I still expect them to be interested in drafting one later. I don't know who that guy's going to be, but I think that at some point a quarterback will be the best guy on their board too. I just think it also means once they address Grady Jarrett's contract to free up some room for that draft class, they'll also probably look at a veteran quarterback. But I do expect them to try to stick as close to just drafting the best player available for them as possible. I think otherwise you wouldn't have seen them trying to fill so many needs with free agency, even if it's just, affordable 1-year fixes.
I was going to ask you, Dave, because what always scares me is you get to that second round and you need safeties, but maybe the safety prospect isn't as good as Najee Harris or Travis Etienne, who's sitting right there and could be a running back, or a position like a wide receiver where an elite receiver falls to you, just somewhere in there where you're like, maybe it's not a position of need, but they're clearly the best available player, but you go with that position of need. I know we saw Thomas Dimitroff and Dan Quinn do that time and time again, where they reached for a guy because they felt like it was an addressing a position of need. And then us as Falcons fans have to sit and watch as the guy we could have had goes on and dominates for the next 5-10 years.
Yeah. And I think, Terry Fontenot, he's got that pro personnel background, but I think he was pretty influenced by what the Saints did. And we saw the Saints, to the point where it was, I think a running joke in their fan base. They have not drafted a quality linebacker in forever. Even it was a need every year, but they weren't necessarily picking linebackers. They weren't picking them early to fill those needs. They were trying to pick the best player available. And I expect Fontenot to stick to that. I really do, as much as he can. I think if it comes down to you've got a fairly close grade on 2 guys and one plays at a position that you desperately need, maybe that tips the scales a little bit. We don't know how he operates yet, but I can see that happening. But all things equal, let's say a couple of the top safeties get wiped out right in front of Atlanta at the end of the first round, and Harris is sitting there. I would expect them to take Harris or somebody else they have a higher grade on. I take them at their word until we see otherwise, that this is going to be a best player available shop, and they're going to try to do what they did this offseason, even when they have more money, and just fill a lot of those needs affordably so they can afford to do that.
Dave Choate, the Falcoholic, here with us talking Falcons draft. And I know this is kind of a tricky question because you could get a backup quarterback essentially at 4, but does Atlanta feel like they can get multiple starters for the start of this season in this draft, given how deep it is?
I think they do. I think they absolutely do. And I think they're counting on it. I think at the end of the day, if you have to go into a season where you've got 10 road games, as they unfortunately do, with some of the guys that they have currently lined up to start, actually starting for them, that'd be a big problem. I think there's only so much that Dean Pease can do, whatever a wizard he may be. I think there's only so much Arthur Smith and company can do with the offensive line if you don't have some upgrades. So the fact that this team has so many needs, that they intend to go for the best guys available, I fully expect them to come out of here with at least 3 to 4 guys that they think of as starters right off the blocks. And I include, even if they go for a quarterback at number 3, I think they may be aggressive later on about moving up to get a guy they want if it's a good fit for them. So, I think that everything we've seen to this point, Arthur Blank and Rich McKay suggested this team is expected to contend. Coaching's going to have to play a major role there, but they're not just going to draft guys for the future. They have to get starters, and I think they know that.
And finally here, Dave, kind of a two-parter for you. When it comes to Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith, who's going to be the final decision maker? And then I know Falcons fans in general, the past decade plus, it's been Thomas Dimitroff making decisions. So we kind of have our views skewed of what the decisions are going to be. How, I guess, optimistic should we be that he's going to get this right?
Yeah, I think, for the final decision making, I really do expect Fontenot to be that guy when it comes to personnel moves like this. I think we've seen the ties that these players have to, members of the coaching staff, but also previous front offices like Fabian Moreau, at cornerback. That's a guy that Kyle Smith scouted and probably played a role in drafting when he was over in a similar role with the Washington front office. So, I think that this offseason has Fontenot's fingerprints all over him. I think he'll be the ultimate decision maker for that. Smith will focus on trying to run this thing as tightly as he can with the guys he's got, which is probably as it should be. Whether they get this thing right, I'm optimistic in the sense that I look at this front office as constructed and Fontenot, and I think these are guys that know what they're doing. They're aware of the task ahead of them, right, in getting this roster to where it needs to be. I trust them because I think they're smart, competent people. Not really knowing how they draft, aside from, maybe taking a look at Smith's role over in Washington, which was fairly positive, but a mixed bag. I think you go in with some optimism for this. I feel good about it, but we don't know enough about them to say, yeah, they're absolutely going to nail this draft. And unfortunately, we just kind of have to be comfortable with the fact that for a year or two, we're really not going to know where they're going with this thing and how successful it's going to be.
Dave Choate, the Falcoholic. Dave, thanks so much for the time.
Appreciate it. Take it easy, guys.
We'll come back with more 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Back here with you, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Breaking news at the start of the show: Major League Baseball will no longer have the All-Star Game or the Major League Baseball Draft in Atlanta due to Georgia's voter laws. And Christian, I know we were asking this when this first broke. We now have a response from the Braves.
Yeah, the Braves, via press release, the Atlanta Braves are deeply disappointed by the decision of Major League Baseball to move its 2021 All-Star Game. This was neither our decision nor our recommendation, and we are saddened that fans will not be able to see this event in our city. The Braves organization will continue to stress the importance of equal voting opportunities, and we had hoped our city could be used this event as a platform to enhance the discussion. Our city has always been known as a uniter in divided times, and we will miss the opportunity to address issues that are important to our community. Unfortunately, businesses, employees, and fans in Georgia are the victims of this decision. We will continue to support the community legacy projects which have had planned and are in process.
So a lot to process there. That the response from the Atlanta Braves this afternoon, I believe, just coming out maybe in the last segment in the last 10 or 15 minutes or so. Doc Herbert will join us in just a little bit. We'll ask him about this as well. Braves season obviously starting. We'll come back with more 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. BJ Bennett, Christian Gokel, glad to be back here with you, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network on a Friday afternoon. Hope you're doing well. We'll talk Final Four in just a little bit, as that'll get underway on the women's side tonight, on the men's side tomorrow. And as we mentioned, former Liberty County standout Davion Mitchell, the starting point guard for Baylor, who is in the Final Four, and he has been named the Naismith Trophy Defensive Player of the Year. But a lot of news around Major League Baseball and the Atlanta Braves. Obviously, today the Major League Baseball announcing the All-Star game in the MLB draft will no longer be held in Atlanta in response to Georgia's voter laws. And with us now from the Platinum Sombrero podcast, Doc Herbert. Doc, good afternoon. How are you?
Great. How we doing?
Thank you so much for coming on. I guess, and we now have a response from the Braves, but I guess what is your response, your reaction to the Major League Baseball decision to move the All-Star game in the draft out of Metro Atlanta?
It's unfortunate, regardless of where you stand on the contents of the bill that was just passed that kind of initiated this whole thing. There's going to be a lot of collateral damage, very unintended collateral damage. It punishes a lot of fans who would probably oppose the contents of the bill. And in some cases, you just look at, one of my best friends has been planning for a very long time to take his 9-year-old son to the home run derby. And when I hear stories like that, it's easy to look at the big sweeping part of this, but then when you start to look at each individual story, more than anything, it's just really sad. And I know that the tone of the press release from the Braves was not happy. They appear to be biting their tongue very hard on this. I know that they had probably had something large planned for Hank Aaron, Phil Niekro, and Don Sutton, tributes to some legendary Braves that had passed on earlier this year. And I'm sure that they will still have ceremonies for them because they're going to open up at home next week. But it's just unfortunate timing all around. Really, really kind of sucks. I hope I can say that on the show.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And Doc, I feel like one of the things that really stuck out to me was from the Braves statement saying it's a city that has been at the forefront of the battle in which Major League Baseball is referencing since the beginning of that battle, right? And so for Major League Baseball to pull it out instead of sticking and using the platform like Freddie Freeman said, and using the city of Atlanta, using the backdrop of that bill to make their statement, it kind of feels like Major League Baseball is saying we're taking our ball and going home here instead of trying to address the actual issue.
Yeah, they said we wanted to come and throw a party at your house, but thanks, but no thanks. We'll just throw it at somebody else's house. And I know that they probably were looking at some of the bigger names in baseball not participating or having their own boycott in that way if this had happened. And MLB is a business, and that's something that they have to consider when it's looking into this. And I agree with you. With what Freddie said, I think you could use it as a platform. Atlanta has long been a city that was associated with civil rights and helping to move things forward. And it's just kind of a shame that that wound up. This is just such a mess, and I'm feeling the need to kind of tiptoe around certain things and not say certain things. And because no matter, it's kind of the world we live in now that it becomes just a bit of a partisan issue, even when you don't intend for it to. So it's just a shame. I was really looking forward to see, you watch the All-Star game if it's at Dodger Stadium, a Yankee Stadium or whatever. It's like, yeah, that's cool. But this is Truist Park. This is our place, and you want to see Mike Trout at Truist Park and Lucas Giolito and any of these American League guys that you rarely see. And they were going to be here in our place. And now they're just not going to be here. And it's out of my hands. It's out of your hands. It's out of most of our hands. We just have to kind of sit back and watch and say, well, have fun in Miami or wherever you go.
And obviously the All-Star game move, but also the Major League Baseball draft. Is that something that potentially could have an economic impact as well? Or in terms of that, is that sort of secondary to the All-Star game?
Definitely secondary. Major League Baseball hasn't done a great job of marketing the draft. There had been some talk about putting it in Omaha, where they do the College World Series. They just moved it this year. In fact, it was going to be the first time that they aligned the draft and the All-Star game together and make it kind of like a big event. So I think if there had been a little bit more of an initiative, let's say a decade ago, to align those two events, by now the draft would have evolved to the point where it was a little bit more of a marquee event. But for now, it has always kind of been in the background. But yeah, it's just another thing to kind of pull away from the event in the city.
Doc, obviously the All-Star game is the story of the day around sports, but Braves did play a game yesterday, have a couple of big ones coming up this weekend. They fall yesterday 3-2 to the Phillies in 10. And to me, I don't know about you, but watching it, it was an amazingly frustrating game to watch. And as I was kind of like exploring my feelings about it, it's because so much of what we saw yesterday is what was frustrating about the team last year, right? Ozzie Albies really struggling at the plate, not being very good at small ball as a team as a whole. And if it's not for a pinch hit home run on an 0-2 count to Pablo Sandoval, the offense is just extremely anemic yesterday.
You know, I see why you say that, but the wind did play a major role. You know, Dansby's first at bat, he hit one to the warning track that the wind was blowing in at about 20 miles per hour. On any other day, that's 10 rows deep. And when you start looking at exit velocities they were mashing the ball all day long. And they had the top 5 exit velocities for the game, and they went 1 and 5 on those. Max Fried even hit one. He grounded out to second base at 106 miles per hour. So it's unfortunate because it's opening day. Pitchers are always a little bit ahead of hitters early in the season. So, and especially when it's like when you're facing a guy like Aaron Nola, Nola is incredibly underrated. He is a legitimate ace. And so when you get guys first and third with 1 out, when you load the bases, you've got to take advantage of those, and they just weren't able to break through. And over the course of 162, you're going to get some annoying ones. You know, it's just how the game goes. And I hate it that it had to happen on opening day. But truthfully, I'm kind of used to losing on opening day.
It's fair. That's fair.
Go ahead.
No, I said that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, so lost last year to the Mets, lost the year before that to the Phillies. And even the year before that, the Markakis walk-off in 2018, that's a great moment. But it's really special because we were down 5-0 going into the 7th. So it seems like there's more of a premium on the games because last year everything counted times 2.5 because there were only 60 games. But I'm just glad it's back. We didn't have delays during spring training. It's nice knowing that starting tomorrow, there's baseball on TV every night for the next 7 months.
And Max Fried, wasn't efficient, threw a lot of pitches in a relatively limited number of innings, but his ERA right now is like the mid 3s. So it wasn't a bad start. How do you kind of evaluate what he did yesterday?
Well, on the flip side of the Braves mashing the ball and having bad luck, the Phillies had it the opposite way. They were getting really good luck on just some dribblers and bleeders, and you're bound to have that. I thought Max did a really good job, all things considered. You could tell it was cold. You could tell he was really struggling with his off-speed stuff. Like, anybody can grip a fastball and just rip it, right? Like, you or I could do that. But part of what makes Max so good is his secondaries. You'll look at his curveball, his changeup, and when it's that cold, it's really hard to maintain good grip. And you could tell that, especially I think it was the 3rd inning where he threw like 34 pitches, really just couldn't dial in his off-speed stuff. But he made it through 5 innings, only allowed 2 runs. He really was able to control the damage, not let things get out of hand. He does what you want your ace to do. And even when he doesn't have his best stuff, he keeps you in the game. So loved what I saw out of him yesterday, even with the struggles.
Doug, I want to ask you, because I know a lot of people think that the Braves lineup is just pretty much locked in, right? Acuna is going to be at the top, Albies at 2, Freeman, Ozuna, d'Arnaud, right? Those are going to be the 5 for the season. I was curious, do you think Albies is any jeopardy in the near future of losing that number 2 slot? Because I know last year with the injuries, a lot of strikeouts just never really got going. Yesterday, 0 for 5. I know he put the ball in play 4 times, but if somebody does get hot, like a Dansby Swanson at the bottom of the order, or would they even consider moving Freddie Freeman back up to that 2 spot, sliding Ozuna up to the 3 spot like they did last year? How big of a leash is Snitker willing to give Albies if he continues to struggle?
Oh, I think that this is just an early season experiment. Yeah, obviously having Acuna, Freeman, Ozuna up top last year really worked well. And having the pitcher back in the lineup does kind of complicate matters a little bit. I think that you'll see, regardless of how Ozzie does, I mean, it'll at least be a couple of weeks before he decides to make any wholesale changes, just because you want to make sure the sample size is big enough to warrant making a move like that. But I don't think that if he's got any type of evidence that would lend itself to saying, all right, maybe it's time to shake it up a little bit, I don't think that you would see him hesitate to do that. Going into 2019, you remember that he had moved Acuna out of leadoff and put him back at cleanup, because that was when Donaldson was there, and Donaldson wanted to bat second. So now you could see, and it was in early May that Snitzer said, yeah, this isn't working, put Acuna back at leadoff, and then everybody took off again. So similar type situation. Gave it a few weeks, said this isn't working, tweaked it, and then everybody got real happy. So keep your eye on Ozzie, though. I think that he's going to have himself quite the year.
Well, I was going to say, in your mind, what would that tweak be if it needs to be made?
I think Dansby would be a logical guy to slide into that second slot and keep Freddie at third. But then again, there's no guarantee that would work either. Me personally, since you've got the reliever, the 3-batter minimum for relievers, I personally would like to see Acuna, Freeman, Ozuna, because it's right, left, right, and probably drop Ozzie down to about five or six, somewhere in there. That's just what I would like to see. I think Dansby's a really, really good candidate to move in that 2-hole.
Doc Herbert here with us on 3 and Out, and Doc, I know it was one game, but man, that extra inning stuff felt really weird to me, and I get they're trying to compartmentalize the games, and maybe it's not good necessarily from a broadcasting standpoint or whatever to have a 17-18 inning game, or even a personnel standpoint within teams, but to me, it feels like you're kind of mitigating the advantages that teams might have in the bullpen, and it kind of feels like when you win in walk-off fashion, and certainly the Braves had their chance, obviously, with Alba getting thrown out, it kind of feels a little cheap. I mean, what was your reaction to kind of seeing that new extra inning rule where you start out with a runner on second?
It's so funny. It's one of those that I love the rule when it works for us, and I hate it when it works against us. And even I had to replay the inning in my head like 5 times, because I'm thinking when the Phillies came up, I thought, okay, well, who made the last out? Because whoever that was is going to be standing at second. And I said, well, there had to be 3 batters, right? So it would have been d'Arnaud. And I kept having to replay and say, no, only 2 men came to the plate, but 3 outs got made. It's the weirdest thing. It does feel a little like, I get it. Like, from the standpoint of somebody who has to sit in the broadcast booth and call an 18-inning game, or being, position players pitching or anything like that. Nobody is really excited about the 14th inning of a baseball game, least of all the players. But it does make it tough to swallow when you've gone your entire life and you just have a clean slate and extra innings, and then all of a sudden there's just a guy standing on second base to start the inning. I know that they don't want to prolong it, but it's, of all of the different tweaks that got made last year with, recently they did the intentional walk is now just, you just make a hand signal and you do the intentional walk. That one wasn't weird. The DH, I didn't think was weird. This one's a little funky. Hopefully in the next collective bargaining agreement, they'll just do away with this one.
Docs, obviously the Phillies this weekend, but after that, the Nationals, who have just had their first series of the year postponed against the Mets due to positive COVID cases inside the Nationals clubhouse. How likely is it that the Braves get to play that game on Monday?
I kind of wouldn't count on it at this point. It's early in the season. They want to nip anything in the bud. And I know that they've got their alternate training site. I don't know how up and running they are at this point, but the Nationals are going to be down 9 players. They got 4 positive tests and 5 people who are right there or 5 players that are right there on the fringes of that. So best case scenario, they're going to roll out with 64% of what was going to be their opening day roster. And I think they would fight that tooth and nail, and not that they would have too much of a say in the matter, but I think that I would say it's a long shot for now. Just abundance of caution was a phrase that we hoped we wouldn't have to hear a lot this year. But coming this early in the season, there's adequate time to make up games if you have to. It's division rivals. You know we're going to see the Nats again, and there will be time to make it up. And yeah, I wouldn't go making plans to watch the game on Monday night just yet.
Doc Herbert, Platinum Sombrero Podcast, joining us here on 3 and Out. Doc, thanks so much for the time. We appreciate it.
Let's do this sometime again soon. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, guys. Or thank you. I don't know why I said thank you. I was just thanking you, Christian, for doing an excellent job as well.
Home?
Yeah. Thanking PJ as well. No, and I believe, right, isn't the game on Monday supposed to be a day game?
Yeah, all 3 games in the national set is supposed to be 4:05 first pitches.
Okay, so we'll have to see how that plays out, and certainly health and safety is paramount and comes first. We'll come back with more 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. BJ Bennett, Christian Gokel, back here with you, 3 and Out on a Friday afternoon. And we heard from Doc Herbert there, but breaking news at the beginning of the show, Major League Baseball is moving the All-Star game, which was set to be in Atlanta, or Metro Atlanta this summer, and the Major League Baseball draft out of Atlanta and away from the Braves because of the Georgia voting laws, which many say are voter suppression, specifically against minority communities. And Major League Baseball making a significant statement. We saw a return statement, I guess, Christian, from the Atlanta Braves, and this is obviously something that's prompting a lot of conversation all over. But the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, which is a significant kind of multi-day event when you think about the game and the home run derby and potentially the economic boost of having not only fans, and we'll kind of see what the environment's like from a COVID standpoint, but just the media attention and everything that comes with an all-star game, and then the Major League Baseball draft, those things being removed, that's a significant kind of economic potential loss for Metro Atlanta. But Major League Baseball saying in response essentially to the voter laws, nope, we're not with that, and we're going to move these events because of that.
Yeah, and Brian Kemp has responded. He said, today MLB caved to fear, political opportunism, and liberal lies. I will not back down. Georgians will not be bullied. We will continue to stand for secure, accessible, fair elections. Earlier today, I spoke with the leadership of the Atlanta Braves, who informed me they do not support the MLB's decision. Now, from that, I think things that need to be clarified. Just because the Atlanta Braves don't support the decision and Brian Kemp doesn't support the decision does not mean they are both in line with each other in terms of what this is about, which is the new laws passed in the Georgia state legislature. But both of them disappointed in the actual results of it. I said this when I was talking to Doc Herbert, and we spoke about this a little bit earlier. I think what the Braves said was a really good point, and Freddie Freeman's kind of articulated this as well. Why not use this city and this town as a platform, right? Why not take an opportunity to come to the epicenter and use your voice, use your reach, use your different players who would have an opportunity, versus just saying, we're taking our party, we're moving it elsewhere, which is what Major League Baseball has done. So I'm not understanding how you're helping the situation by moving it out. If anything, you're economically impacting the people in which the laws hurt, right? Like that's what you're doing, and you're not helping the situation whatsoever. If anything, if you are, as opposed to this, as you say you are, what you're doing is stealing Brian Kemp. He's getting behind this, and he's going to use this as political leverage. If you're truly against what he is for politically, he's going to use this as an opportunity to further solidify where he is politically. So I don't like the decision from Major League Baseball here. I think you're walking away from it. And what Doc Herbert said, I thought was really true as well. This doesn't necessarily mean Major League Baseball did this because Rob Manfred in his heart believes that's what's happening in Georgia is wrong. What probably happened was Rob Manfred, who said in his statement that he's spoken to players, former and active players, the Player Alliance. And if I had to imagine, he heard from some pretty significant players who were going to be big parts of the All-Star game that said they wouldn't come. And that probably costs you views, that costs you money if you're Major League Baseball. I mean, I hate to be pessimistic about the decision Major League Baseball made, but we have to be realistic as well. And if Major League Baseball, there was potential they were going to be losing money on this, they probably made the decision easier.
Well, and a lot of concern, understandably, over the voter laws. Freddie Freeman kind of referenced it. You mentioned it about, could you have used this opportunity as a chance to say, hey, this is what we stand for. This is what we advocate for. We're coming together kind of in unity, whether it's baseball in general or multiple kind of groups across multiple fronts. But economically, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But potentially the economic implications may have some impacts that kind of aren't intended with the response to the bill.
They aren't intended. It's that they just apparently don't care. And BJ, I'm absorbing this the same way everybody else is absorbing this right now, and more thoughts are coming to me as I think about it. But it's just, how are you helping the situation by moving it out? I'm not understanding that from Major League Baseball, right? I mean, maybe I'm missing something here, BJ, but I don't understand how Major League Baseball is helping the situation by moving it out of the state of Georgia? How are you furthering things? How are you changing things versus just punishing unilaterally an entire state? How are you helping the situation?
Yeah, and potentially we talked about this back in the opening segment. It's probably I don't know if it's practical logistically. Obviously, it's kind of above my pay grade. But to say, hey, could this move prompt a reconsideration politically? I don't know. I don't know if that's practical. I mean, probably not.
Mark, BJ, I just lost a week of work, right? And I've been to multitudes of Braves games. And predominantly at the Braves games, the workers at the stadium are black, right? And you just cost them at least a week of work. That Truist Park was going to be open. The Battery inside of Atlanta with all the restaurants inside of it, that's going to be closed or not quite as full as it would be during All-Star Week. I mean, you just cost people at least a week's worth of labor and wages.
Yeah, and I mean that's a very fair point. I mean, I guess from baseball standpoint, and like you said, it's hard to kind of know what the intentions or the response is for every single person within baseball when you have kind of a group decision made. But I guess could part of the response or justification be we're hoping that this decision can help influence decisions that are made in the future because of what we're doing? Will that, I guess, add more to the consideration process that politicians go through when they are engaged in decision making in the future? Do you think there's maybe some viability there?
I don't know if once every 21 years, because the Braves haven't had the All-Star game in Atlanta since 2000. Before that, it was 1977, the last time I was here. I don't know if a once every 2-decade event from probably the fourth biggest sport in America is going to do anything to sway the decisions made by Georgia's legislator one way or the other. I think maybe you're thinking you have too much influence when you're saying something like that. Again, I look at the things that I can see and that are going to be tangibly true, and that is you have just cost there's 52 weeks every year, and people inside the service industry, inside the hotel industry, they count on big events, big times, right? To where you can really take that next step in terms of your quarterly earnings, and you just cost a ton of businesses 1 week out of 52.
And we'll have to wait and see where the All-Star game is going to be moved to. But I believe this was mentioned off the bat. Obviously, you've got to honor Hank Aaron. I mean, that goes without saying. That has to remain a leading part of this, even if it's not in Atlanta, right?
1,000%. And Rob Manfred has said that they will continue to do that. But again, Hank Aaron came to Atlanta and played baseball, right? And he said this time and time again. He knew what he was in the middle of coming to the South to play baseball. But much like we have said, he didn't, when he faced racism and he faced stuff of that nature, he didn't pack up his bags and leave. He showed up and went to work every day and became the most prolific offensive player in the history of baseball, and used his platform to become, I mean, it's in the call of his 715th home run. A black man in the South has just broken Babe Ruth's record. He didn't pack up and leave. He stuck it out. And so maybe Major League Baseball, when they do honor Hank Aaron, should have taken some notes.
And Major League Baseball deciding today to remove the All-Star game and the Major League Baseball draft from Metro Atlanta, from the city of Atlanta, in response to voter bills passed in the Georgia State Legislature, and responses all over the place, opinions all over the place. It'll be, I guess, it's unknown kind of what the feedback's going to be moving forward from this, what the, I guess, fallout's going to be moving forward from this. Is this something that potentially becomes more commonplace? Is this, like you intimated, maybe kind of a once in a every couple of
decades,
half decades or decade kind of set of circumstances? I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, and I know you and I think are on the same mind of, and I don't want to put views out there about that you have, but I mean, of the same mind that, yeah, there was stuff inside the laws that were passed that I do not agree with. I think you should be able to walk up and give somebody a bottle of water if they're standing in line trying to be or exercise their rights as Americans to vote. I don't think that should be dissuaded. I think we should have every opportunity to go out there and vote legally, right? I think that is absolutely the case. But if Major League Baseball is going to make decisions on where they place things and distribute things across 30 teams, I don't know how many states, but across 30 teams based off of where their politics lie, that seems like a slippery slope to me, where you're going to enforce your politics on every single team. And if they don't line up with yours, then you're going to punish the teams in the states they're in. I think, again, you're punishing the Braves for a decision they didn't have, right? You're punishing the people inside the city and the surrounding areas of Atlanta for a decision they didn't pass. None of the workers at Truist Park signed their names on that legislation, right? If anything, I guarantee you there's a significant portion of them who voted for people who had the opposing views of what's on that legislature. So I don't think packing up your ball and going home is the answer when you have a disagreement with something.
In the Braves statement, which you read at the end of hour two, clear disappointment from the Braves, and again, statements from a wide variety of people coming in. But that news breaking earlier this afternoon, literally, I guess, minutes after we came on the show, Major League Baseball removing the All-Star game from Truist Park, along with the draft, the Major League Baseball draft, in response to Georgia's voting bills. And perhaps there'll be more details, more perspective shared on this coming through the weekend. BJ Bennett, Christian Gokel here with you. We'll come back with more 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Final Fours set for this weekend as March has come to a close. March Madness still ongoing, and the Final Four on the men's side tomorrow. Tonight on the women's side, you have South Carolina and Stanford, a couple of number one seeds, and UConn and Arizona. We mentioned this a couple of times on the men's side. Davion Mitchell, Hinesville, Georgia native, the point guard for the Baylor Bears. So maybe if you're thinking, I don't really know who to root for in the Final Four. Hey, one of the best players for Baylor, a local product. And again, Christian, we talked about it. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, maybe more than that. I don't acutely remember, but you had Will Richardson, who's been a star at Oregon, who was in the second round of the tournament. Davion Mitchell is in the Final Four, and Richard LeCounte, former Georgia Bulldog football star, all on a Liberty County, I believe, state championship team. So Mitchell today, by the way, named the Naismith Trophy Defensive Player of the Year in college basketball. So a young man out of the 912, congratulations. What an awesome accomplishment. And Christian, to me, Baylor might be the kind of the X factor in the Final Four, because if you've watched Houston, and I had Houston in the Final Four, I think Houston is an incredibly dynamic offensive rebounding team. They're kind of positionless in some respects, like some of the NBA teams where guys can play different spots. But I don't know that they get hot shooting the ball like Baylor does. Like Baylor literally will go, like, you'll be watching the game, okay? It'll be 27-21. You'll go make a sandwich, you'll come back, they'll have 42 points. And you're like, how did Baylor do that? I mean, for me, Gonzaga's, a clear favorite on the left side of the bracket. But I think Baylor-Houston is going to be a really interesting game, and Baylor is a team that when they're on, they are on.
BJ, why are you beating around the bush on this? And we know you're pulling for Houston in this game for one very specific reason. If Baylor wins, not only does your mom beat you in our bracket challenge, your mother would win the ESPN Coastal Bracket Challenge. She is currently in the 99.7 percentile of all brackets on ESPN.com, but you're not far behind. And this one's going to come down to points and come down to that Baylor-Houston game. Your mom has Baylor going through. You went against Davion Mitchell and them boys from Baylor and went with Houston in the national championship game. So we know you're going to be pulling for Houston, BJ. It's okay.
Okay, but have you confirmed mathematically? Because
yes.
Look, we just need to know. If Houston wins, do I win the bracket challenge?
Yes.
I mean, so I guess the question.
No one doesn't have Gonzaga going to the national championship that is in position to win.
Okay, so I guess the question is here. Obviously, there are two elite college basketball experts in my family. So I guess the question is, am I getting my information from my mother, or is she getting her information from me? I mean, we got to figure out kind of.
I think by biology, you got all of your information, or at least half of it, from her.
Very good point. Touche. Yes, but that is interesting the way it is played out. And I do feel comfortable with my bracket because I believe Cam is doing really good. I think you might be doing okay. I don't think Kevin and Ben did well. I don't think Cody did well.
I think the Zuko is tied with Cam for 13th.
Oh, PJ. All right. Well done, PJ. So, but I feel like I've done a good job in the office, but I have a chance to win the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, in your mind, is Gonzaga kind of the favorite overall? I mean, most people pick them to win the national championship. They've been really, really impressive.
Yeah, I think they're the predominant favorite, but also at the same time, you have UCLA, who's gone from first four to Final Four, which is just my new favorite thing to say. And they're a team that everyone kind of had casted out of the Pac-12. They weren't one of the top 4 or 5 teams you thought were coming out of the Pac-12, but they're really good. I think they're going to give Gonzaga everything they want, but at the same time, I would not be surprised if tomorrow you see Gonzaga win by 20, right? I mean, they're just that good of a basketball team. I think the team that can give Gonzaga the best run for their money is Baylor. I like Houston, but just what Baylor can do on defense, and like you said, the way they can score in spurts, I think Baylor is the team that has the best shot of taking down Gonzaga.
And this is a question that we talked about a couple of days ago when looking at the tournament, because college basketball and its national championship is viewed a lot differently than college football, or at least the chase to the national championship. Whereas when you have kind of a relative newcomer to the college football scene, and I understand the postseason formats are different, that everybody looks for reasons why it's unacceptable. Like, oh man, Coastal Carolina, they could never, their resume, college basketball, not only do we not address that, we kind of celebrate it. Do you think there will be college basketball fans? Because I don't know that if this were to happen, there would be a precedent. Do you think if UCLA wins the national championship after being in the first four and not being nationally ranked all season, you might have some people go, yeah, did they get hot or were they the best team? And is this what we want?
Kind of feel like that's how it is in general in college basketball, right? I mean, every now and then the odds-on favorite will win the national championship, but for the most part, it's a team from a pool of teams we think will end up winning it. UCLA, I feel like a lot of people are pointing at them, Loyola, and a few other schools and saying, maybe we didn't see this tournament correctly, right? Like maybe we didn't do the best job of seeding these teams out, right? Like Loyola was at one point, the number 7 team in the country, and they ended up as an 8 seed, right? Going up against a number 9 seed Georgia Tech ACC tournament champion. Like, I don't know if this thing was completely seeded correctly. And so should UCLA have probably been like a 5 or 6 seed? Yeah. And then at this point, we're not having the same conversation about them that we're having right now.
That's a fair point. And I also think now we view the Pac-12 differently than we did during the regular season. I think during the regular season, we were like, oh man, the Big Ten and the ACC are the 2 best leagues. And then outside of everybody but Colorado, I think the Pac-12 won in the opening round, or excuse me, not only won the opening and the second round, because Colorado won in the first round. And then obviously you've had UCLA make a great run, USC make a great run, Oregon State make a great run. Not even the teams that were at the top of the standings in the Pac-12. So I do think it's a little bit different. I mean, that's a good point. To me, I think Gonzaga is the team to beat. And we were talking a little about Gonzaga last week. They've been good now for a generation. Okay, they've been elite for a generation, and they've had NBA draft picks. But I don't know.
Weird hair that started all this.
Oh, Adam Morrison, man.
Yeah,
Adam Morrison
started all this.
Yeah, but I don't know that they've had the NBA depth on teams in the past that they've had now. Like in the past, you might have 1 or 2 NBA guys. I think most people expect their point guard to go in the top 5. I think a couple of their wing players are like guaranteed lottery picks. So in the past, Gonzaga had great talent and great coaching and shooters and athleticism, but maybe they didn't have the NBA depth in terms of like a Kentucky or a Duke or a North Carolina or a Kansas or whoever. And I think now that is no longer true. I mean, not only are those other programs down, but I think Gonzaga has 2 or 3 guys that are going to be first-round NBA draft picks, and I think you've seen that throughout this tournament.
You didn't know that they played basketball up in Spokane?
Yes, I was aware of that. Yes.
I mean, they're pretty good up there. Like you said, you need that breakthrough team, and then if you can like catch that fire and just keep the program going, this is the result. Mark Few's done a really good job of that. You need an Adam Morrison to come in, be weird, get a lot of eyes on your program, be the clucky upstarts, but not many teams and programs can keep that going. And Gonzaga's done an amazing job of that. They're the odds-on favorite. I'd say they probably should be favored by 8 to 10 points in all of the games remaining, no matter who they play. But I think if they are going to be upset, but of the final 3 teams, if I had to rank them, I'd probably go Baylor, UCLA, Houston in terms of chances of beating Gonzaga coming up here. And I'm not comfortable saying any of those teams are going to pull it off, but I am comfortable saying your mom's going to win this entire thing. So I think Baylor is going to the national championship.
Yep, probably. That would be quite the accomplishment. Not a surprise, but quite the accomplishment. We hadn't had a chance to mention it today. Roy Williams retiring at North Carolina, a college basketball legend. Could Mark Few be a guy? I mean, do you go to Washington State for your coach if you're UNC?
We talked about this. UNC is one of those programs where it's just you can pick who you want your coach to be. It doesn't matter what school they're at. You go up to them and say, hey, you're our coach now. They're like, all right, sorry, guys, I got to go. North Carolina called. Sorry about it. But I don't think Mark Few is going to be the guy. I think probably going to look on staff if I had to guess. And what you're hearing from a lot of
Hubert Davis.
Yeah, and what you're hearing from a lot of UNC alumnus is the fact that, listen, we want it to be a UNC guy.
Makes sense. You see that, and Hubert Davis is a guy that's a great player. I believe was at ESPN for a couple of years as a commentator, and has been an elite addition to that staff. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, Roy Williams retiring. Women's Final Four tonight, men's Final Four tomorrow, and a couple of national championship games coming up right around the corner. We'll come back with more. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We're streaming live on the web, ESPNCoastal.com. Back here with you on 3 and Out. BJ Bennett alongside Christian Gokel. Just a few minutes left in the show, but really honored to be joined by a guest here at the end of the show to get his perspective. State Representative Carl Gilliard from Garden City, kind enough to join us on the program. Sir, thanks so much for joining us. Obviously, news out of Atlanta today regarding the All-Star game. What is your reaction?
We just completed day 40 in the Georgia General Assembly, so we just completed the 2021 session. Senate Bill 202 is a travesty for Georgians. It's, I think what is happening is a direct result of people say Jim Crow and people say Jim Crow 2.0. I say Jim Eagle, because what has happened is Georgia decided the fate of the voters in November, whether we voted Democrat or Republican. And in January, Georgians voted Democrat or Republican. They voted. In the 2019 session, we kind of, as a General Assembly, we changed the voting machines and different parables. So we did some repair in reference to voting. And a lot of those were at the hands of those leaders that came up with this bill. So to come against the will of the people is a powerful thing. I don't totally agree with it being moved out of Atlanta, because I think a bigger statement would be for them to have the games in Atlanta, and at the game to make a statement, much like the basketball leagues did in the inception of Black Lives Matter and all the above, using that platform. LeBron James came to Atlanta in the All-Star game, and the first thing he did coming in is he took a stand against this bill. So there's going to be more, I think, that will come. Coca-Cola, Delta has already made a statement, as well as Coca-Cola. Immediately when Delta Airlines made a statement, those that were in leadership, and I'm not about parties, so Democrat or Republican, but those that were in leadership put a bill out to tax Delta Airlines. So we got to stop the petty politics and get back to the basics, because now it's affecting the economic growth of Georgia.
State Representative Carl Gilliard from Garden City, kind enough to give us a few minutes, sir. We really appreciate your perspective, your time, and your work. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're up against the clock here, but thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much. Let's play ball.
And Christian, powerful perspective there. Unfortunately, we only have about 45 seconds left on the show, but State Representative out of Garden City, Carl Gilliard, chiming in on the program.
Yeah, again, I think that's now you've seen it from both sides of the aisle in the state of Georgia. Now, Brian Kemp and Representative Gilliard, they're both saying the wrong move from Major League Baseball to move the All-Star game out of Atlanta. If you want to make change, you don't just quit and leave. You stick it out and make change, and Major League Baseball deciding to take the easy road and just pull it out of the state of Georgia.
And the news of the day, in case you're just now joining us, obviously Major League Baseball moving the All-Star game out of the city of Atlanta, and the Major League Baseball draft out of the city of Atlanta as well. We'll have to wait and see kind of what more responses are moving forward. But another edition of 3 and Out in the books. Thank you to all of our guests, including State Rep Carl Gilliard, for chiming in. Next week, we may have baseball on Monday. We may not. We'll have to wait and see, but we'll be with you. 3 and Out, ESPNCoastal.com.